Can networking help improve your employee engagement at your company? I'm Greg. I'm the introverted networker. In this episode, I'm going to tell you why I think the answer to that question is yes. Why I believe that companies should be investing in teaching their employees how to develop deep professional relationships within their own organizations. I've been talking about this for the last few episodes, and the reason why is I've been having a lot of conversations with CHROs, chief people officers, people who are HR leaders in the past few weeks. And something that keeps coming up for all of them, and what I've been asking them is, what are your priorities for the next year? And something that keeps coming up is helping address a disconnection at work. Their feeling is people are not as civil at work. People are less connected at work. And I think part of that is in the last 5 years, people have started working from home or hybrid. And we addressed the technology part of this, meaning we got everybody set up with their own home setups for work, and we got them Teams or Zoom or whatever it is your organization uses. And we figured out how to get people on meetings together in front of their computers. Great. Now we've had 5 years of sitting in our house, and maybe we're hybrid, but when you go into the office and it's hybrid, sometimes people are there, sometimes they're not. Some people are working from home. Some days it's very often not coordinated. So you're in the office, but you're not really talking to anybody. But we did all the technological things we needed to do to get people online. And we just said, okay, go do your jobs. And I think what we forgot was that in the office, when we all worked in the office, there were moments of connection with our employees. There were times when our employees connected. And this is not me saying we all need to go back to the office. This is not a return to office call, because look, I've been working from home for almost 5 years. I enjoy it. I don't really want to go back to the office full time. I've started working in some places where they do go in the office, so I go in a day a week or a couple days a week, and it's enjoyable. It's nice. It's nice to see people. I'm not saying everybody needs to go back to the office. What I am saying is we have lost some of what was in the office, and we never replaced it with something else. And as I talk to these CHROs, chief people officers, they're recognizing that people are less civil in their offices. People are not as collaborative. People are siloed, and it's impacting work, and it's impacting employee engagement. And the reason I say that is employee engagement has a lot of factors. And I've been working in HR for 15 years now, more than 15 years actually. And we've always focused on engagement. How do we get people to be engaged? How do we get them to stay? And the easy things are, let's pay them more, let's give them better benefits, let's have on-site things, recognition. The hard things are, let's help them develop relationships that make them want to stay. And those relationships that make them want to stay are relationships that help them grow, relationships that help them see other opportunities and advance within the company, relationships that help them do their jobs better because they know who to go to solve the problem. We haven't invested in helping people develop those relationships because we didn't know we needed to. Back in the times when we were in the office, it kind of happened naturally. And it reminds me of this conversation I had this week with a friend of mine who's the head of HR for a company. And I said to him, what I really miss and where I really feel disengaged from my coworkers is I used to just get up from my desk and I would walk over to somebody else's desk that I worked with, or somebody that was near me on the floor on another team, or somebody that I traded emails with, but I needed to talk to. And I would just walk over to their desk or to their office. I would stand at their desk. I would stand in their doorway, and I would have a conversation with them. And it wasn't just, hey, I need this, or hey, can you do this for me? Or hey, what's going on with this? It was, hey, how are you doing? Hey, what's new? How have you been? What are you working on? And we would have these conversations throughout the day. I mean, as needed, and they would happen. And we would talk about ourselves. We would talk about our lives. We would talk about who we are. We talk about what makes us tick. And these weren't deep personal conversations by any means. These were all professional conversations, but I got to know those people as people. And I got to know what got them excited. I got to know what made them angry. I got to know how they operated. I got all of those things. And what I feel like I've lost is when I've been working from home, I have plenty of people I interact with through email or Teams or Zoom or anything like that. None of those moments happen. The desks and doorways moments don't happen. And you can call it something else. You can call it the water cooler moments. Most people don't have water coolers in their offices anymore, but we all kind of know what that means. But I call it desks and doorways. Desks and doorways aren't happening anymore. We're not setting aside time. We're not intentionally doing this anymore. And I think that's what's causing detachment in our workplaces. And actually, one of these CHROs that I talked with last week sent me an article after we talked, because we were talking about this specific issue. And it was an article that was from HR Brew. I think it was carried in a lot of other publications this week and last week. And now the new buzzword is the Great Detachment. People are talking about how people at work are detached from their jobs. And look, people have always been kind of, we've been fighting disengagement for decades, right? This is not new. But the Great Detachment is the word they're using because, according to a Gallup report, 51% of employees are actively looking for a new job or looking at job boards. And that's more than half the employees, right? And so is that something that's going on, and what's causing that? And really what the experts in this article said, and I'll put the article in the newsletter, but what the experts were saying is people are disconnected at work. They are disconnected from their coworkers, from their bosses, from the organization as a whole. And they're not having these genuine connections, these work friendships that are coming out of it. And that causes people to not be tied to the organization and not engaged. If you're not feeling like the people that you work with are people that you know or that you actually care about, you're more likely to leave. You just feel like work is something you go do the tasks and then you go home. But there's nothing sort of emotionally attaching you to it. You don't like the people you're around because you don't know those people. You don't get to know them. They're not part of your day-to-day routine. You're just showing up, getting online, sending a bunch of emails, responding to Teams messages and Slack channel messages and all that kind of stuff. And then you're just logging off. So you're not connected. You don't feel a sense of purpose. And so what are some things they suggest in this article? They talk about, putting people in employee resource groups, and, actually they say it, learning and development that involves social interactions. That's one of the recommendations in this article. Training people to have work conversations, social conversations at work. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Is it sounds ridiculous to say we need to train people to have human conversations. But I'll tell you, we are getting more and more disconnected every single day. And I've even seen places where people talk about venture capital or private equity investing in apps to help people connect, meaning it's basically like a dating app, but for professionals. So you go on and you say, I'm looking to meet this kind of person, and they pair you with a stranger. That's the last thing we need, is more apps and more technology. We have so much technology. The technology is causing us to get more and more disconnected. And this is not new. I mean, we've been talking about disconnection, and it happens even more as you go through the different generations that are in the workplace now. But we don't need another app. We need to spend time training employees how to have professional conversations. And again, I know that sounds crazy for some of you. Like, how to have a professional conversation, but there's many people who don't, or who have forgotten, and that it's like a muscle. And if you don't work that muscle, it goes away. It doesn't work anymore. It gets weak. And our muscle for having professional conversations has completely atrophied over the past 5 years. So what do organizations need to do? They need to get people to actually sit down and talk about how they're going to create an intentional way of working, an intentional process, a habit, a muscle around connecting with people that aren't on their team or directly in their chain of command, connecting with people in other teams, connecting with people who are frequent emailers, like people they email or people who email them. Have an intentional conversation outside of a task you're trying to complete for work and get to know the other person. And how do you do that? You have to sit down either on the phone or in person and say, tell me about yourself. I know it sounds crazy to say we need to have set aside time to sit down and get to know each other. And sometimes when you start a new job, they'll have like meet and greet, go meet all these people that you need to work with. Okay. But how often do you keep doing that? How often do you keep those conversations going? How often do you get to know people? Now, don't get me wrong. Some people get to know other people within the organization. It happens, but I don't think in most organizations, they're very intentional about showing people how to do this. When people are more connected to their organization, and going way back, Gallup had this question years ago, and they probably still do. Gallup 12 is a way of measuring engagement. It's a 12-question survey. And one of the questions in that survey is, do you have a best friend at work? Or they phrase it as, you say, I have a best friend at work, and you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10 or 5. I don't remember what the scale is. And if you have a best friend at work, they have shown that you are more likely to be engaged and stay with the organization. Now, some people hate the best friend phrasing because it implies lots of things, but the idea being that you have to have a really strong connection with somebody you work with, not just friends. Because if you say, I have friends at work, people go, well, I talk to people. I guess they're my friends. They're my work friends. If you say I have a best friend, it's really a deep connection. So they ask that question to see if you have a really strong personal/professional connection at work. And if you do, you're more likely to stay. So I'm not saying it's the company's job to make people become friends. I'm saying it's their job to give them tools and training to help them improve their social interactions and get very intentional about this. Because if you don't get intentional and you just leave it to chance, you've got some people who might be able to do this naturally. And you've got a lot of people who are like, I don't know if I'm supposed to do that. It doesn't seem like anybody asked me to do that. But if you as a company were like, I want my leaders or a certain group of people to be very intentional about going out and creating these professional relationships, you are going to get better connection. You are going to get rid of some of this detachment. You are going to restore those doorway and desk conversations that start to grow a culture and start to make you a better place to work. And that's going to lead to people being more engaged. That's going to lead to more retention. People are going to stay longer. You're going to have people start collaborating across the organization and helping each other out because they know who they are. You're going to have a much faster collaboration because, and I've seen this, if I know somebody and there's a problem going on and we can't seem to solve it, I can pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, talk to them because they know me. We've developed a relationship, not during this fire drill, not in the heat of the moment, but we've developed it prior to that. And when we sit down, we both know where each other's coming from. We know our styles. We trust each other. That's the key here. We trust each other. And we can just come to a decision and get things solved and move on. Much faster decision making, much faster organization, more efficient organization. These are all things that come out of people having professional relationships. That's why I think that companies investing in professional relationships will be, and one of my friends who I talked to this week coined this, so I give him credit for it. But he said, I think that networking internally or professional relationships or more connectedness internally is the leadership competency of the future. As we get more and more automated and technology focused with everything we do at work, the leaders that know how to develop professional relationships across the organization are going to be the ones that succeed. it will become the leadership competency of the future. And I love that. And I'm going to focus on that and keep talking about that. And as you're listening to this and you're thinking, Greg, I showed up here to talk about networking because, I need to grow my network. You need to grow your network internally. I talked about this back in issue 54, right? That's like over a year ago that I was talking about networking internally. Networking internally is a superpower for you. If you go back and read that issue 54, you can see all the ways you can do it. You can see all the whys of why to do it. Better visibility, better recognition, better internal mobility. As an individual, if you have a job, you need to be networking internally at your job, doing a lot of the things I've always talked about. But if you work at an organization and you're seeing silos and you're seeing people not collaborate, networking internally is the solution to that. So I hope that gives you a different insight. I know it's a little different slant on networking today. Joining me and my co-host back here, that's Leia the cat back behind me. She's helping me out today. But hopefully that was a useful conversation for you. You got something out of it. If you work at a company and you think this is great, you'd like me to talk to you more about it, you want to talk to my company, want me to talk to your company, I would be happy to do that. Reach out, send me a note, send me an email, show up on LinkedIn. I'm here to help. Go out this week internally at your company. If you're working, go talk to somebody you usually don't talk to and get to know them. Have a professional conversation. I want you to do that. Go out. Remember, always be connecting.